And a really terrific feature coming out tonight as part of the ESPN cover story. Senior writer Mina Kimes reports on the unbreakable bond between DeAndre Hopkins and his mother, built out of tragic circumstances. And the great Mina Kimes is here this morning to talk about all the big stories around the National Football League, and so much buzz around that story. I'm looking forward to reading it. But we have major breaking news. I almost think we should break into Good Morning America right now if they're paying attention to this. Sam Darnold has been named the AFC Offensive Player of the Week. So, Mina, I suppose I will ask you the natural question here. Yes. Do we think that Sam Darnold is a top-flight NFL quarterback, or do we think he's the greatest player that ever lived?
I don't know. The gold jacket is obviously coming. Dominique knows we did a draft show. I've been high on Darnold from day one. I was really heartened by what we saw at him this Sunday, in particular the deep ball, because one of my concerns when they brought on Adam Gase was that they were going to have a more dink-and-dunk style offense, but he actually has a really underrated deep ball. Obviously, Robbie Anderson gets downfield. So for them to air it out like that was extremely promising for Jets fans.
Yeah, you were high on him when everyone was getting all excited about Baker. You were still whispering about that Darnold high, so I'm happy to see him playing well. Mostly for you, not much for Greeny.
Listen, I think when you have a guy that has this type of arm talent, you are going to do different things. And we've seen these things from Adam Gase when he had Jay Cutler, and now you have Sam Darnold, same type of arm talent, and you're just excited if you're a Jets fan, but more excited if you're a Jets wide receiver.
His problem was interceptions, though.
It's decision making.
And fumbles.
Well, he did throw one bad one, actually, in the red zone in this game as well. But let's not bury the lead here. He's the offensive player of the week, and that obviously will lead all the ESPN programming for the remainder of the day. Or maybe it'll be the Jalen Ramsey trade, which we've waited forever for. And it feels, Mina, like there are two pieces to this story. The first is, what does this make the Rams, who are off to what has been an uneven and frankly disappointing start?
Well, it makes their defense better. Let's start there. Obviously, we know that Jalen Ramsey is an elite talent. Now, they got rid of a lot. They gave up a lot to get him. But he lets them get back to doing what they want to do, which is playing man coverage. Before they traded for Marcus Peters, Wade Phillips had them running man more than half the time. Marcus Peters struggled with that, so he made adjustments. Actually, at the beginning of this year, they were playing zone, the fourth most in the NFL. Jalen, as we all know, he wants to play man. He has not made a secret of that. I actually think him and Wade Phillips, both from a football and a personality sense, are a perfect match.
Yeah, cover one, single high man. They've only run 17% of the time so far this season. In the modern NFL, you can't live like that. The Patriots, 50% of the time. The league average is 36% of the time. So they're excited to have a guy like this. But the problem is, you need three corners in this league. And now they got one and maybe two if you count Roby Coleman.
Yeah, you look at Roby Coleman in the slot. Maybe David Long, who's a five-star baby from Michigan, can come in and play and do some things. But when you look at Jalen Ramsey and what he brings to this team, it's a difference maker. You go back to last year, Marcus Peters, who was a guy I liked, when was matched up against Michael Thomas. I mean, it was abusive what he was able to do to him. And so now you have Jalen Ramsey. Wade Phillips can do some of the things we watched him do in Denver, and it does make this defense better. But from a team perspective, there's so much that the Rams need.
The other side of this, Mina, that I find fascinating, and it happens while the owners are actually meeting as we speak, is it is another example of NFL players, star players, taking control of their destinies in ways that has never happened before. What do you think the reaction to that is going to be?
I think you're right, but I do think we have to look at it case by case. Jalen Ramsey wanted to stay in Jacksonville. They didn't give him a long-term contract, right, going into this season. So it's not like he was agitating. Yes, he complained about some of the coaching at times and a few other things, but it wasn't like he has been agitating to leave this entire time. I think this is what he wanted to play in this sort of defense. But Ryan's absolutely right. The defense wasn't the problem with Los Angeles so far this season. It's been the offense in particular. It's been that offensive line.
All right, and then we have to get to what most other people besides me consider to be the biggest story, and that is the Dallas Cowboys and the status of their head coach, Jason Garrett. Jerry Jones talking about that yesterday, and we all found these comments fascinating.
To some degree, we have invested a lot of money in the evolving of Jason as a head coach. As you know, he played for us as a backup. His daddy was in our scouting department. There's a lot of things that make him A+ across the board. So you've got to look at the entire picture. And now he's evolved into maybe ready to win some Super Bowls.
Yeah. How close do you think he is and the Cowboys are doing that?
Well, I don't know. I certainly wouldn't have him as our coach this year if I didn't think he was capable of winning a Super Bowl.
I've so enjoyed watching Ryan Clark's face while that was playing. Why do you?
Did you listen to that?
I did.
So his daddy worked for us, and because
Yeah.
And the other part is, right, we've invested time in his evolution as a coach. So that means when he was your backup, you were like, yeah, one day he's going to be our coach. And then when he was your assistant coach, one day he's going to be our head coach. And then you say you've invested all this into his evolution as a coach. And when they ask you the one question that you should be trying to answer with his evolution as a coach, you say you don't know. If I invest years and decades into a person, after that time, I'm going to know who you are. Like if you ask me, RC, do you know your wife? Yes, I know her. I've invested time in her evolution as a woman. And so if you are Jason Garrett and Jerry Jones, and I've invested time in you, I've gone back through your family tree from your father to you, and now I know. And when I ask you decades later, is he a Super Bowl coach? You better not dang tell me I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
it can't take that long.
It doesn't matter what he says. As I've been saying all of Jerry Jones's offseason, you don't believe anything that comes out of his mouth. You need to look at his actions. And he doesn't. No one sends their coach into a season as a lame duck unless they have no confidence in him. So as long as they've all these decades he's invested in his family, it doesn't seem like he really believes.
Mina, make some sense of all this.
She can't.
I thought they should have moved on from him before the season. Unfortunately, you can't do it mid-season. You can't promote Kellen Moore right now. He's already got a lot on his plate. What they need to do is get back to letting Kellen Moore what he did the first few games, but they can't move on from Jason Garrett.
So do you feel like he has
if he could get the Giants and the Redskins and the Dolphins again, then I can do what Kellen Moore did the first
But
few
very
years.
quickly, because I'm out of time already,
wrong
but
about
the
that.
thought was brought up here that maybe it looks like Jason Garrett has taken that offense back away from Moore the last few weeks. Is that what you think has happened?
I mean, it looks like someone has, because it's looked. I know they had easy opponents, but everything they're doing is completely different now, right?
Yeah.
Less play action, less creativity, less motion. It's
I
a
was
disaster.
on record the first 3 weeks of saying that what they were doing from an offensive schematic standpoint was not revolutionary, and it still isn't.
All right. Once again, the ESPN cover story, Mina's piece on DeAndre Hopkins and the bond with his mother comes extraordinarily highly recommended. Wonderful to have you. Anytime you're in town, Mina, we love to have you here. Thank you. Meanwhile, Maria, where do we go next?
Well, we got to run the hurry up. Dan Graziano joining me over. Hurry up, Dan.
I'm hurrying.
Okay, everyone get it together. Broncos, they've started to turn their defense around this season, but what does that mean for the future of Von Miller?
It makes him a very interesting trade target for other teams, but the Broncos right now say they don't want to move him. They're going to continue to hear offers and inquiries on Von Miller over the next couple of weeks. If the price gets high enough, you never know.
So that's one of those names that we could be looking at. We talked about it, big names and trade rumors. Cardinals' Patrick Peterson returns from suspension, but what are you hearing about him being on the trading block as well?
Well, just back from suspension. This is a player who has been unhappy there in the past. Again, the Cardinals are saying they don't want to move him. We say this. 24 hours ago, the Jaguars were saying they didn't want to trade Jalen Ramsey, so take it with a grain of salt. Just back from suspension, he'll play a couple of games, and he will be top on the list of teams that need cornerback, and that is a lot of teams.
What about the Redskins? Let's talk about their left tackle, Trent Williams. He has not played all season long, so what are the chances that he could get traded?
He has not played. He has not returned texts or phone calls. This is a great mystery of the season. Where is Trent Williams? What does he want? When will he be back? Washington says they're not going to trade him. Washington may be to be believed on this because they feel like the issue is not contract related. It has to do with the medical issue. He's been silent on the issue. If he doesn't get moved in the next 2 weeks, then maybe the story takes another turn. Sure. My understanding is he's not interested in playing for Washington anymore. He's made his money, and if it's stay home, then he's comfortable with that, as he's shown so far.
Sure. To clarify, they are not your texts and phone calls that he's not returning, right?
He's not. He's not. He used to. But Trent, if you're out there, hey, help a fella out.
Don't do that to DG. He doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve it. That's your hurry up and some of the guys that could be on the trading block. Friday night on ESPN2, our next UFC Fight Night features former middleweight champ Chris Weidman moving up to face undefeated Dominic Reyes in the light heavyweight main event. And the prelims start at 6 Eastern with the main card at 9 Friday night on ESPN2 and, of course, streaming on the ESPN app. Coming up on Get Up, who would you rather have as your quarterback, Dak Prescott or Carson Wentz? Dominique and RC don't agree, so it's going to get loud in our studio. Plus, there is one big early season concern with the Clippers that could impact them come April. We'll talk about it with Jalen and Jay as we continue to run the floor.